I'll start by creating a workspace folder and then cd into that folder. So we need a client and a server application. So let's create two folders for each, one for client and one for server. Let's start with the server. I'll initialize a Go project using go mod init greeter server. And while we are at that, let's do the same on the client part as well. cd client and then go mod init greeter client. And then let's go back to the server application and we'll create a main Go file here as our entry point. To save us some time, we'll use the Hello World gRPC stubs from Google. And to use the Hello World gRPC, we need to define a struct that implements the Hello World protocol. So we have a greeter struct that has a say hello method that takes a Hello World request and returns a Hello World response. Let's add a few more imports that we need and then continue with the main function. So we want our server to be a command line application, and at the very least, we'd like to be able to serve at different addresses depending on how we configure the application. For that, we'll get the address that we want to serve as a variable called addr from the command line and parse it. And if the user doesn't provide this command line argument, we'll default to localhost 8080. Then we'll start listening at this TCP endpoint. And to establish gRPC, we'll also need gRPC credentials. And if we don't want to use TLS authentication in our client to server communication, we can use the credentials that's created by this insecure new credentials constructor, and then register the server using a greeter instance based on this type we just created here. And then we start serving using this TCP listener. So that's a bare minimum gRPC server with like 10 lines of code. The only thing that remains is to implement this say hello function that we are going to use to respond to our clients. So let's implement that real quick. But before that, let me add an action item here. We want to eventually establish a secure connectivity between the client and server, and we'll use some SPIRE magic. So I'll add a to-do item here, and when the time comes, we'll fix this to-do. So back to our say hello implementation. Inside this function, for now, we are just going to return a reply to whoever just called us. And the problem is we don't know who actually called us. We don't know the identity of the client because we haven't established an identity control plane yet. We don't have any form of principals, identities. We haven't distributed any kind of certificates or secrets or tokens or keys to any of our workloads yet. From the perspective of the client and server, everything is pretty much anonymous. They can be anything. So that's why we call the client unknown client, because we don't know what it is yet. And again, when we install SPIRE, we'll fix that later because we'll be overlaying an identity plane and all of the workloads will know what and who they are. But that's good enough for a server. Let's build the code now. And for that, I'll create a hack folder, and inside that hack folder, I'll add a build.sh file. And the content of the file is pretty straightforward. We'll just build our only main.go file, and if it fails, we return an error message. And if it succeeds, we'll say that everything is awesome. So let's try it. But before that, I'll fix this flag usage. I need an additional parameter here. And when I run hack build.sh, I get everything is awesome. So it is, I guess, isn't it? And when I look inside the project folder, I can see an executable file called main. And when I run this main file, it starts listening on localhost 8080, which is great. We have a server up and running. Now it's time to do the client, which we'll build it in the next video. So see you there.